So I
Well, look,
respect.
great this or that game. It ties right into what we're talking about, especially if we talking about taking them kids to Fogo de Child. Listen, if you out here living it up, doing your thing, man, you must be mindful, pay attention to financial stability. Let me talk to y'all about how this conversation came about. So listen, I was talking to a homegirl of mine.
Tell them why you
and
mad. Tell them why you mad, bro.
tell them why I'm mad. Now, listen, I'm talking to a homegirl of mine, and she like, I really want, she's like, at this big age, man, I deserve a man who's financially stable. She's like, I put my time in, you know what I'm saying? I got my house, my business, my money, my full, everything is up. You know what I'm saying? She's like, I deserve a man who's financially stable. So I asked her right out of curiosity, just pushing the limit of what she thought. She was just like, when she said that, I said, well, what does that mean? Right? What does it mean for him to be financially stable?
Yo, all right, check it out, man. Let me just be real for a second, man. What we all needed has been definitely a space of elevation for myself and healing. I want that to be for you as well, man, and anybody that you feel like needs this space. It's definitely what we all needed. Please like and subscribe, and come see what we got for y'all. Peace.
And basically what she said was he just need to have all his, ducks in a row. You know what I'm saying? Need to have everything in order. And so I wanted to push her a little further. So it's like, all right, cool. We'll define that. Like, how will you know? What do you need to see from a man to say that his ducks are in a row, that he has everything in order, that he's financially stable? And she really couldn't give me like a clear, definitive, like, this is what the things I need to see for a man to be financially stable. And so I was like, man, listen, let's take it back to the fellas. Let's talk about it ourselves, but let's also have some other conversations with some other women. And let's see if we can not only figure out what financial stability actually technically means or can mean, but is there something that we can agree upon that says, this is what financial stability is, especially if you're a man and you want to enter into a relationship and a woman is saying, hey, I want you to be financially stable. What does it even look like?
What does it look like? Great question.
Yeah. So what is financial stability for y'all? Like, I know y'all ain't necessarily having to deal with this conversation in the dating world because y'all are married, but like even in y'all marriages, like, what does financially stable look like for y'all?
Hey, let me ask you a question before I answer that. Was when that happened to you, what did that do to you? Like, what did you immediately do?
I mean, I immediately went on like, this could be a problem that we could discuss and solve for all folks, right? Because if you're in the dating world, I look for like resolutions. That's what my mind works. So what I immediately did was like going on research to find what could be a stable way to communicate to folks what financial stability is, but to also present something or create something that could help people grow to a level of acceptability and financial stability. At the end of the day, you do what you want to with your life, but we're talking about something that we can all agree upon. So I kind of went on like I did some teacher shit for real. I was like, let me find something that people can agree upon, stand on, and then use that as a tool to bring us together through conversation.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I asked was because it's, once we get to that point where we realize that like, hey, I may not have a barometer, right, in terms of what financial stability is. It's like, what happens next? A lot of us as African Americans, we don't know what to do next at that point, right? Because we haven't defined what financial stability is to us. And we probably don't even know because our culture, right, has been, I would say, blurred eyes, right, in terms of what those pillars are, in terms of what we need as financial stability. For me, I'll just answer the question real quick. You know what I mean? It's my ability to provide and support with absolute free of mind and free of any anxious energy or any guilt. And then it's my ability, it's my family's and my community's ability to do those things if I'm not there or on autopilot.
Sean, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of hard as you ask that question because I think that it's subjective to each person, right? Especially when you take into account your own personal experiences, because one of you guys, your definition of financial stability may not even register for me as stability, but it's because of my background in not having money. You know what I mean? Like I didn't grow up like I didn't grow up like I lived in like Somalia. No disrespect to Somalia, but just painting a picture.
A
Uh,
third world country.
yeah, I didn't grow up like that, right? But I will say that I grew up in a way where, me being broke, I might have 7,500 to 10,000 stash for certain reasons. But to me, that's zero, right? So it's subjective. To answer your question though, financial stability, and so this is the definition. Financial stability is having a sense of security about your money. It can also mean having a financial system that is not stable. And so for me, financial stability really is existing in a way where there is no instability
Mm.
around finances, but moving towards a place prayerfully where I can then have the power of choice in what it is that I do moving forward. Like that would be financial freedom, in my opinion.
And
So
can we dive into that definition? Right, right. One
sure.
of the biggest thing I think, in my opinion, that came out of that, which because if we're being anchored by the conversation, right, the word security comes up,
Yeah,
right?
but it also says sense of security too. So
Yeah, but
That's the
we
subjective part.
we
yeah,
we can get the sense of security, but y'all, this is where we got to get real. We live, and you said it. You should. We live in America. There is no sense when it comes to the pillars of what capitalism is in America. So
right.
that's where I really want to make sure we do, man. Like, yeah, we can get into all of these subjectives and all of this other stuff, but if you live in a society, you work in a policy, there is a standard of stability in it, right? That's why we measure the economic stability of a country, right? The GDP and all of these statistics. There is a algorithm, right, that supports what stability is. And I think as a community, we need to define, right? This is one of the reasons why we're here, right? Is to define it, right? And make sure that we understand what it is, at least at its foundation.
Yeah.
Okay. So using that definition, how would you then critique that definition, or do you concur with it?
I concur with it. That's, I was, the word security, if depending on how you look on it, macro or micro, right? If you take it into just what we're talking about in a home, right? Let's just say you're being attacked, right? Do you have the ability to secure your home, to secure your finances, right? Because if you do, because you're always going to be attacked in some way or form, right? The ability to provide security for your home and your wife and your finances is key. So that's something that I don't think you can argue about, right? These element of security and what security is defined as, to yourself, right? It's still security, but then it's like security of what? What are you securing, right? And what are you securing towards?
So let me ask you a question about that then. If we can all say that we agree with the definition, can you also agree that that can look different depending on the person or the household?
Hell
1,000%.
yeah, because some people got different senses. People got different senses of security. You know what I'm saying? And there's no right. Speaking far left or far right, there's no such thing as complete security, right? Because you know what I'm saying, one thing could come in and change your income stability. So when I really try to break down like what financial stability was, I'm a practical person. Like I need to see it. You know what I'm saying? Math is my thing. So the patterns and the numbers and all of the sequences got to add up for me. And so I was really looking at four key things, right? So I want to introduce what these three things could mean to your financial security or financial stability. Income stability, right? Which is how you make your money or money coming in. Debt management, which we talked about in our this or that. Savings and emergency fund. So if something happens, what you got, laid up. Sean said broke for him may be 10K, but he got 10K laid up. And then future planning, whatever you put in place in terms of retirement or things going on. So if we look at those four like criteria of those four areas, that may give us greater insight to what it looks like to be financially stable. And we got a rubric that we want to bring to the table that a person could potentially say, hey, this is where I exist in these four areas. This is where I exist. This is how I need to grow. You know what I'm saying? And this is something that you can use as a person to essentially become more proficient or exemplary as a person who can say that they're financially stable.
I got a question. Income stability. What's your thoughts on income stability? Right. What is that really? Because I want to make sure that for me, income stability is your ability and your actual execution of making money.
I love that thought process. I mean, when I think about income stability for folks, I think once again it's subjective, right? If you got a job and you get paid bi-weekly, income stability for you could mean every 13 days you can depend on another check landing.
Yeah, but that's not subjective. What I'm saying is there's a continuous stream of income. You have a plan for a continuous stream of income to come your way. That's
Yeah,
the stability.
but I think it's subjective because somebody might be okay with getting a $2,000 check every 13 days.
No,
Somebody
I know
else might be like,
that's what I'm saying. But the stability part of it is you have a mechanism set up to make sure that you're receiving income.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that it has to be plural when it comes to income for it to register for me as stability. And the reason why I say that is because, I mean, we're seeing right now with things that are happening in the world. We have people that have had income stability, quote unquote, job security, quote unquote, for quite some time. However, now with a new administration, people are leaving their jobs and dropping like flies, unfortunately. You know what I mean? And so I think that you have to, if for me, for it to register for me as stability, there has to be something else outside of that. And you're using that as the fuel to then get you. That's the fuel for the vehicle.
But that's exactly what I'm saying, right? Because we're all tying it together. Like this concept of security and freedom isn't just tied to a 9 to 5, right? It's tied to, again, the plan of making sure that when your 9 to 5 does go away, where you really don't have control, and the things that you really do have control over, which is your ability to sustain income, that plan, right? You might have
Agreed.
passive income activities that you do that's going to help leverage, right, if you do lose your job, right? So
agreed.
again, making sure you're designing mechanisms that's going to generate income.
So
Yeah.
Kim,
I
are we
love,
I was just going to ask, are we all saying that we agree that income stability, there has to be an element of diversification?
Uh,
no, I
I
don't think
agree.
so.
That's why I asked. I would love to hear.
I agree.
The reason why I don't agree, right? Even if I'm looking at the rubric, right? So the rubric for those 4 criteria, which is income stability, debt management, savings and emergency fund, and future planning, it then takes those 4 criteria and it gives 4 different places where you can land. So if we just look at income stability, you can get a 1 for needs improvement, you can get a 2 for developing, a 3 for proficient, or a 4 for exemplary, right? So if a person needs improvement, this is saying they have they have inconsistent or no income and they are not able to meet basic needs. For a 2, which says that they're developing, it says they have stable income but insufficient to cover all basic needs without external support. And I think we're going to agree there. 3, proficient, it says they have stable and sufficient income to cover all basic needs with some ability to save. And then 4, which is exemplary, it says they have high and stable income covering all needs, savings, and discretionary spending diversified income streams. And so the reason why I don't say that like the income stability has to be is because you could really fall into 3, right? With proficient. But you could be a doctor or a lawyer, or you could be working on the oil rig. You could be bringing in 5 to 700K a year, and that amount of money is giving you such a savings of a plan that you may even be able to retire early. Like if you have a really, really high earning job, you may not need that diversified in order to feel like you have income stability.
Well,
But
okay, I apologize. I cut you off, brother.
just to feel like you have income stability, you know what I'm saying?
The reason
You may not need it for that.
the reason why I disagree with what you just said is because I think what you began to explain spoke to the need to be financially astute and a steward over your money and know how to save, know how to invest. Like there are people that make 700,000 but are terrible with finances, right? So then where do they fall? Because tomorrow they could get fired. And if they don't have any of the future planning, if they don't have the investing, if they don't have the saving, if they don't have that stewardship over their finances, they still could potentially fall in financial instability. I think what you said first, to me, it registered as we do agree in that the number two, developing for income stability, says stable income but insufficient to cover all basic needs without external support. That to me is like that entry level into what financial stability is, but it's the entry level into what financial stability is. Because again, that you could read that again and then think about that doctor that makes 700,000 but is terrible with their saving.
Yeah, let's go through the rest of those pillars though. Let's so we can make sure we define it. And I want to make sure I'm speaking to level 4 at all times when I'm
Yeah,
talking.
let's speak to level 4. So level 4 for income stability is high and stable income covering all needs, savings, and discretionary spending with diversified income streams. But for the sake of people who may be listening and where you may be, 3, proficient also says stable and sufficient income to cover all basic needs with some ability to save.
Okay. What about debt management? Let's get through the rest of those pillars: savings and emergency fund, future planning, so we can lay it out for the people.
Debt management, we'll go straight to exemplary, right? So to be a four in debt management, you have to have little to no debt or consistent repayment on low interest debt, and excellent debt to income ratio. So
Okay.
that's really 3 different things, right? So little to no debt. If you do have debt, you need to have a consistent repayment on low interest debt. So it needs to be low interest debt. So what we talking about, like a house or maybe your college loans, something that has a longer payoff term, but you're consistent on that payment. And then it says your debt to income ratio. You must have an excellent debt to income ratio, which is what? Ain't it like 10%? That 30% is the highest you can go before they start looking at you funny, but really you want to keep it at
All right.
around.
That's a different conversation. You're talking like a tax conversation. That's different than I think the ratio of what you should try to make sure you keep your household expenses
I
to
think
what's bringing in.
I
Well, I
think
was talking
what
about
you
like
should
if
be
you got a
just
credit
speaking
card.
about is like if you try to qualify for a
Oh,
loan.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So even
Yeah.
if you look at like your credit card, like if you got a $10,000 limit on
Mhm.
your credit card, you should never really be over 3,000. But it's better for you if you keep it between what I know what credit in terms of just being able to see your credit score be good. They want to see you somewhere between 10 to 20%. And they really want you to stay there just so they can eat off your interest if you know anything about how they function.
Talking about credit utilization,
Hmm.
which is how the credit score came about, which
Yeah.
goes back to the answer that I provided when we were in the icebreaker. Because even in looking at the debt management and what is for exemplary, it says little to no debt or consistent repayment on low interest debt, excellent debt to income ratio. And for me, I would look at that as proficient, but it's subject to me, right? Because my exemplary would be to eliminate all debt. I personally have a desire to play with house money for the rest of my life. I want to have the choice to be able to say, nah, you know what? I'll pass up on that opportunity. I'm good. Or I don't owe you. So I could choose what I want to do.
True. I mean, you think about other countries, a lot of other countries don't even have that. But the thing is, they, you know what I'm saying? If you go to some other countries, it takes them a long time to build a house or it takes them a long time to build something because they don't have the ability to get credit to get the resources they need to build a house right out. So they be building houses over, it's like pyramids for them. It might take them 20 years to get a house built, but they ain't in debt when they done.
Yeah. Real talk.
You got to leverage other people's money. And I'm not just talking about, loans, and I'm talking about coming together as a community and raising the capital for a project to be executed. But
Speak to that. What does that mean? Because not everybody is going to understand that.
well, I want to make sure that we get through like the rest of the pillars though, and then we can kind of like revisit, working it.
Yeah, I mean, because this is still keeping me in the mindset of like we're talking about this, but
Yep.
for my question is for a young lady, if you're looking at a man and you're saying like, is he financially stable? You know what I'm saying? Do you agree with this? Right? Is it important for him to have outside work? Because if he got outside work, he might have less time, right? Is it important for him to be completely debt free, right? Or is it important for him to have a great credit score, which means he's gonna have to have some level of debt because they're looking at that, right? The next one is savings and emergency fund. The top category says number 4, exemplary, says emergency fund covers 6+ months of expenses, robust savings, and investment portfolio for long-term growth. Now, 3, proficient, says emergency fund covers 3 to 6 months of expenses, actively contributes to savings, right? So this I see the difference between 3 and 4 is the amount of savings or the amount of emergency fund that you have plus investment portfolio, long-term growth in your money. Thoughts on this? Y'all agree with this?
1000%, man. I think if you look in our community, there's some wild statistic out there, but I think the majority, the mass majority of us do not have a savings or emergency account. Um, and this is what we're talking about when we talk about security and stability. So I just want to make sure that that particular pillar is something that you seek first, or a subset of the income, right? Generate income. Because to the point about what Sean was saying, in the case that your 9 to 5 decides that you are no longer valuable, right? You got enough emergencies and savings to take care of yourself for 6 months.
Here's a question I have for y'all. Let's just say, right, because just talking about emergency funds. So let's just say, for the sake of an even number or understandable number, let's just say your household expenses for the month are 5,000. That could be low in the DMV, but we just need to know, right? All of your expenses are 5,000. So 6+ months means that you have 31,000 above, right? Now, if this is your emergency fund, say you want to buy a house, the down payment for the house is 5%. So maybe let's just say the down payment for the house is $50K. Would you advise that a person, let's just say the person they have a total of 70,000 saved, but 30 of that is their emergency fund. Would you advise them using that 50K, which depletes their emergency fund, or would it be like, nah, emergency funds never get touched? So in order for you to invest in that house, you need 80K.
First of all, I'm not an advisor. I just want to say that I think we just speaking in the strength of like what I would do or what we would do. I think
What would you do?
you said you have a fund that has 70K in it, and this fund is your emergency fund.
You have a savings that has 70K in it, but you know that your emergency fund is 30K of that. You don't have enough outside of the 30K to put the down payment on a house. All right. So the question I'm really asking is, once you got the emergency fund in place, can it be touched? And if it can be touched, is it really the emergency fund?
Yeah, well, I think you answering the question, right? That it really shouldn't be touching it, and I think you have to really take a lot of things into consideration because if you're now buying a house, then your emergency fund that you used to set up may now is different, right? So now you're walking into a different an increased level of expenses. So I'm definitely telling you, you might want to make sure you reevaluate what your emergency fund should be, right? To make sure you have the 6 months that you need, because I don't think that that's going to be the number again. And then I would definitely tell you to find ways to not use it and leverage it, because I mean, here's the other part of it, right? If you're then going to use it and then the equity in the house is going to increase, you can get your money back, theoretically. So it just depends on how you play that.
Yeah. If no more conversation, we'll go to the last pillar, which is future planning. Where number 4 talks about exemplary says you have a comprehensive future plan. For example, you have a fully funded retirement account, a diversified investments, and then estate planning in progress. Number 3, proficient, for those who at least want to get to proficient, is active contributions to future planning tools. Examples like your 401k or your Roth IRA, life insurance, and then all of this aligns with your financial goals with life priorities.
Yeah, I think I want to make sure I'm clear on like another pillar that's in there is like investing, and that's very different from contributing to your 401k or Roth IRA. Investing could be me, Yusha, and Sean coming together and deciding that we wanted to create an investment fund portfolio, right? And we're gonna come together and we're gonna drop $20 in here in a month, and it's going into the stock market because the stock market in this environment in America is the way that you make money. Or it could be that you are now taking your whatever's left, right? After your income and expenses, whatever's left, you're deciding to put that into Acorn or into Charles Schwab to buy fractional shares of something, right? But you want to make sure that in this world that we live in, right, investing in assets is a part of your financial stability journey or wealth building journey.
Yeah, I mean, even when I look at this, we're looking at these 4 key things and kind of where they land in terms of 1, 2, 3, or 4 needs improvement, developing, proficient, exemplary. And we're saying a person can use something like this to help grow financially. But the question I'm really asking is like, if we sit this in front of the ladies, like, do they agree? Like, would they say that like, hey, we agree with these standards? If fellas get to 3 or 4 here, that would make them more eligible for our sense of security, right? Because we're not just talking about your sense of security in the dating in game. We're talking about all the people that you're dating and seeing. Do they feel a sense of security with how you're moving with your money and your finances? And so to that note, I have a homegirl who is going to join us on the interview. So we're gonna shoot over there and we're gonna talk to her and we're gonna see what she thinks about this and how this really lines up for her and what she thinks. Y'all stay tuned. All right, so listen, what we all needed, family. We have a very, very, very important guest with us today who's going to help us discuss this topic around financial stability. As you have heard me and the fellas, talk about and discuss, we are really looking for a way to codify what financial stability looks like for both Black men and Black women, or men and women in general, and to kind of think about like where are the points where we agree, and can we come to some kind of like term of understanding that can help us be more financially stable together, but also financially ready when we start dating. Our guest today goes by Naza Shelley, who I've met a couple years ago. She owns a really, really dope business that I think is super important to the DMV area right now, but it's becoming more important to the world. And I know that soon her and her partner will grow this thing to be something that you all can rely on to find really quality and suitable people to date and engage with. Naza, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said Naza because I read it, but I always call you Naza. Naza, can you tell us, and I didn't say your company's name on purpose because I want you to say it in the spirit of how you wanted to be introduced to folks.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us your company, tell us, what you do, and anything else you want us to know.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Naza Shelley. I'm the founder and CEO of CarpeDM. So CarpeDM is a tech-enabled matchmaking service for Black singles. So the gist is that we provide you high-quality background checked matches that are either hand-selected by a personal matchmaker or curated by our algorithm. And then we deliver those matches through our patented video-first dating app. So at the core of it, we are an introductory service where we introduce amazing high quality singles for the purpose of like long-term lasting love connections. And we focus on primarily Black singles with emphasis on helping professional Black women find love.
Thank you for that. So y'all are in the market of really helping professional Black women do the work of weeding out people, weeding in people.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you all are looking for when your matchmakers are trying to decide like who's a good fit? What are the things that they're looking for in processing?
Yeah, so by its very nature, our service initially like kind of does a lot of weeding out because we're a subscription model service where all of our members pay. And so there's already a built-in barrier to entry because we're looking for people who are serious about finding committed relationships. And so if you're not serious, you're probably not going to be looking at something like CarpeDM because you're probably going to use a Tinder, or Hinge, or a Bumble, something that's free, very low barrier to entry. And so that's one thing. Then everybody on our platform is vetted, meaning we interview every person and everybody goes through a background check. So we verify your identity, so you ain't gonna be caught up on catfish on CarpeDM. You're not gonna be engaging with bots and fake people. We verify that you're not on a sex offender registry, that you don't have a history of violent crimes, financial crimes, fraud. And so those are the things that are really important for us, because we want to, one, build a community of high quality singles, meaning that we've done our part to try to make sure that it's safe to date within our community. And two, because of the nature of the people who end up joining CarpeDM, we know how much they value those aspects of like the vetting process. So, you know, our I know we're going to talk about finances here, but like our average member makes $100,000. And so, which makes sense because, you know, this is a service that costs anywhere from, you know, $4,500 to $10,000 to use. But, you know, we're very results driven, and we feel like what we're doing is really the future of online dating, which is kind of like harkening back to the past. You know, personal matchmaking, you know, your friends, your family, your network, really working really hard to connect you with people who are amazing. And so that's kind of what we do.
Dope, super, super dope. Thank you for sharing that. There's so many different questions or curiosities I could have about your business, but I do, you know, for the sake of time, want to get to why we're here, which is partly, you know, connected to what you just said, right? With your average member being $100,000 a year earner, and then the price of barrier entry for your price. Obviously, you all are dealing with people who have some coin.
Mhm.
So entry point here, right? The conversation we're having is because I was talking to one of my great friends who is a black woman with some coin, and she's basically discussing, you know, one of the things that's most important for her is that a man has a level of financial stability. And so, me being the curious person that I am, I started to ask her, well, what does that look like for you? And she was just kind of like, you know, he needs to have all of his ducks, you know, in a row, right? Things need to be in order, and that's very kind of, you know, ambiguous language, right? It's artistic language. What does that actually mean, right? And so what I ask her is, when you are dating a man, what are the signs? What are the things that you're looking for to indicate that this man has financial stability? And what does financial stability mean to you? And she couldn't give me a clear definition, right? She had something in her mind, but she couldn't give it. And
Mhm.
so that kind of sent me on a search of like, how can we kind of create this tool that can be utilized to kind of give this synergy between black men and black women, to say, hey, we can agree on this tool and use this as a mechanism of gauging where we are. It may not work for everybody, but that's what a tool is, right? It don't work for every situation, but for what it works for. And so we'll get into that tool. But before we start, what does financial stability mean to you, right? When you're dating, and you can talk about your dating life if you want to. I ain't gonna ask no crazy questions. But when you're looking for financial stability, what does that mean to you, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, for me personally, like I, you know, am very interested in finding a man who prides himself on being a provider, right? And wants to own that role within a relationship that he has with me. And so obviously, well, maybe not obviously, like I'm a woman that has financial means, right? And am able to take care of myself fully and completely. And so what I'm looking for is someone who wants to add to that, and someone who recognizes the value I kind of naturally bring to the table, but has done so much of the work himself that he's able to step in and be like, I know what you got, right? But like, don't worry about it. I actually have it. So, and that's not because I think it's for various reasons, right? It's because um, I think women in general look for stability more so than men, and that could just be a factor of the nature between men and women. And so I have the desire to find someone who has a provider mindset, and that looks very different because I've dated men in very different income brackets, and I would say that they all had provider mindsets, right? And so I dated men that made less than $100,000 who very much had a provider mindset and who very much had some of the things that are in your criteria that are deeper than that first surface level of income. And then I have dated men who are providers who mainly rely on like the income, but maybe had not gotten as deep right into the debt management and the future planning aspects of being like more well-rounded when it comes to being able to be a provider. So I think that for most women, and even when I'm dealing in a matchmaking context, that first level that you guys have kind of identified, that income stability, really is like the surface level that like you can kind of look at when you're deciding whether or not you want to start to engage with someone and like think about them as a partner. And I kind of analogize it to like a car, right? So someone pulls up in a car and you're like, okay, let me look what's going on the outside. Like, how is this outside of this car kind of taken care of? Okay, paint job look good, it's clean. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's a decked out Honda. Maybe he driving a Range. Maybe he driving a Rolls. You know, there's levels to it, right? But I can kind of tell from the outside that something. I'm gonna open the door and kind of see if I want to step in and sit down, right? And so, or I'm gonna let him open the door and see if I can step in and sit down, right? And so that's the income, right? Like, do you have a baseline income that makes sense for me when I'm thinking about what type of life I would need my partner to be able to provide, not just for himself, but me and hopefully our family? But then when you get into these deeper layers, the debt management, the savings and emergency fund, the future planning. Now we in the car, we looking at the upholstery, you know what I'm saying? Like we opening the hood and we're trying to figure out when's the last time you got a maintenance check. Is the oil good in this? Is this Benz that looks really good only going to get us 40 miles because you don't have it ain't been maintained and it just looks nice on the outside? Or is this potentially a Honda, but it is in pristine condition? You have kept it up to date and it is perfect. And this thing can go another 300,000 miles, right? And so that's what I think about when I think about dating. And I try to compare it to, because you can't, unless you're actually really involved with someone, you're not getting to those deeper levels, the debt management, the savings, and the future planning until, depending on how accelerated your courtship is, until a little bit down the line. And so what a lot of people really go on is like that first level of income stability. If I'm making 100,000, most women want to date someone who makes as much as them or more, or will compromise on about 20%. So if I'm making 100 and you're making 80, it's something that most women will consider, right? But a lot of women are like, he needs to be making at least what I'm making or more, because they're looking for that type of mindset and that type of baseline stability.
Mm. Thank you.
Mhm.
I love analogies. So I love the car analogy. Have you used that before? You feel like you
I've
like,
never used it
oh,
before.
that just came off the dome?
When I was looking at your chart, I was like, okay, this makes sense. Like, but yeah.
So you're saying that based off the chart that we have, right? This rubric, the income stability for you it's really just the initiator. It's like, all
Mhm.
right, cool. And some of the women in your network are discussing what that income stability, and it's going to be different for every woman, but you're like what it needs to be. But I heard you also look at like, sometimes the income stability, it may get you to open the door, but it's not necessarily going to be the tell-all. And so it doesn't sound like you are the type of person who would necessarily just look at the income stability as a yes or a no, but it may give you, all right, cool, it's a Honda, it's
Mhm.
clean, I'm gonna get in because the Honda's clean. But as soon as you get in, you're like, as soon as I get in, I'm looking.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Versus the Mercedes, you might be like, it's clean. You might not be looking as soon as you get in. You might let some things develop and unfold, but it changes your intentionality in terms of what you're looking for. That's what I heard.
Mhm.
But I'm also gonna say this: though I love analogies, they still be ambiguous
Mhm.
because they can be applied artistically.
Mhm.
Nah, we want practicality here.
Okay, let's go.
When you meet a dude,
Mhm.
what are the things that you are looking for on him that
Yes.
signifies income stability? And then what are the things you're looking for once y'all start dating? Because obviously you can go on a first date and be like, what's your credit score? You can.
Mhm.
It's a little weird.
A
Ain't no
little
vibe,
weird, a lot of weird, yeah.
ain't no flow. You asking about my
Mhm.
credit score, son, what you but these are things that you are going to want to know, or
Mhm.
there will be indicators that help you identify how well maintained his car is. Tell us these real things that you're looking for.
So for me personally, I look for a man who has the provider mindset from the very beginning. And so a lot of things that you hear people talk about on like podcasts and on, the battle of the sexes and the war between men and women, these men never bring up. It never is a question who's paying for the meal. It's never is a question how I'm getting home. It's never is it's never a question, are these things getting planned, right? Like it's never a question like, is he dressed appropriately? Does he know how to interact with other people that are around him, right? Does he know how to be a gentleman in any space, right? And so it's not just necessarily like, is someone taking me out, to nice dinners all the time, right? But is he able to plan? Is he able to be consistent, right? Does he take good care of himself? Right? Because you definitely are not going to take care of me if you're not taking care of yourself, right? Like you should value yourself um, above most things. And so if you're not presenting yourself well, if you're not groomed, right? And I've seen guys who go high and low. I've seen guys who only go high, and I've seen guys who only go low when it comes to their appearance, right? But they're all well put together. So I've seen guys that they got the Louis on, they got the Gucci on, the quiet, some of the quiet luxury. I've seen the guys that do the mix and the match. I've seen the guys that are like, hey, your whole outfit is probably from Target, or maybe it's from, Banana Republic or wherever it is, but you clean and you're put together, right? And so for me, I'm a listener, right? Like it's important. It's my job. It's a man's job to court, and it's my job to discern and to listen to whether or not he is saying the things and his actions match to match for the mindset that I'm looking for. So if you're the type of man that's like, I love money, I love to get money, da, 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 and you don't have actions that back up that statement, meaning I can't tell what your hustle is, I can't tell how you're diversifying your income, I can't, you know what I'm saying? Like nothing is really kind of aligning with what it is that you're saying is important to you, then that's not gonna bode well for like our relationship. Furthermore, if you're the type of man that's like, I want to have kids, I want to have a family, I have a plan, right? Like this is my plan to be able to take care of my family. Like I will do whatever it takes to be a provider for like the family that I want to have. These are cues that this person has the right type of mindset in my eyes, right? If the man is worried about how much you make, right? If the man's asking you what you're bringing to the table, if the man is, trying to have, trying to go 50-50 and split bills, that's fine for the woman that's acceptable for, right? But for me, I'm looking at whether or not, okay, do you have good judgment? Because if you can't afford to take me out, then how can you afford to take care of a family, right? Like if you're worried about this dinner, then I don't think that you're going to be able to do childcare and, you know what I'm saying, like the types of things that may be necessary for us to build a family. And I say that because people will say, well, you make money. Like, why don't you be prepared to bring everything to the table? I'm a ride or die, right? So you don't have to worry about what I'm gonna bring to the table in times of need, or whether or not, you know what I'm saying, like I'm doing what is needed to be done in order to be financially stable, in order to make sure that I'm there as a backstop for whatever my partner needs. But it's important to me, first and foremost, as someone who's looking for someone who is a leader, right, that they exhibit those qualities from the very beginning.
Yeah. Some of the things I heard from you was care. Right, care of himself, identifying that as a means of like care for you. Um, I heard presentation, right? But I think we all know that, right? Because people can present. You know what I'm saying? People can present, and we know that gets people in the door, right? They pull up. You know what I'm saying? Let me clean this house. Let me wash this car.
Hmm.
It ain't necessarily how the house looks on the first day or how the car looks on the first day, right? It's how the car looks
Hmm.
after that, because everybody's going to present. You know what I'm saying? They can present. But presentation, like you said, will get them in the door. But then, are they a gentleman? How do they care for others? I hear planning. Um, I heard provision, just in terms of like paying for the dinner. Now, I want to get into more stuff that's going to be a little bit more personal, right? Because I want to get into your mindset. Because I would love to ask you to speak for all Black women because you run this company, but we know you can't, right? So I
Hmm.
want to speak to you and just kind of, allow our stories, if you're willing to be open and vulnerable in this space, allow our stories to be some inspiration for others.
Hmm.
I also want to be protective of your safety. So if there's something I ask or a way in which I push and it don't feel safe for you, just let me know, right? And
I appreciate that.
for sure. But before we go into it, I know you had a chance to look at the rubric. This rubric essentially faces, four different points that we believe could be. And so, of course, it has this setup where you have income stability, debt management, savings and emergency fund, and then future planning. And then for each one of those, like four criteria, it gives, four different points, right? So you have a needs improvement, a developing, a proficient, and exemplary. I know you've kind of breezed through this rubric. How useful of a tool do you think that this could be to have some common understanding?
I think it's fantastic. Yeah, I think that it's great. And I think being able to honestly score yourself, right? And kind of look at where you could improve. Um, from my perspective as an individual, as well as for what I'm looking for in a partner, is a really great stepping stone to like having the right types of conversations in your relationships to see like whether or not you're compatible. Because some people, some of these things may not be important to some people, right? And so while in general, I think that they're all very important, they may not be important to some people at a certain stage, right, in their life. And so I think it's important to make sure that you and your partner are aligned either on the current status of where you are as well as the future status of where you plan to be, right? And like and what that timing kind of looks like for you. So if you're like, "Hey, I am doing really good with income stability, like I have low debt management, but I really need to start I need to get into, future planning and saving an emergency fund, right? Like, okay, well, what are our goals? Like, what's my goal in the next 3 to 6 months? What's your goal in the next 3 to 6 months? I think people it's interesting because finances is a touchy subject that a lot of people don't want to kind of delve into. But I think if you want your partnership to kind of last, it's best to be transparent about these things when you get to the right stage in your relationship, right? Like you're committed, you guys' feet are pointing in the right same direction. You're looking at marriage, you're looking at longevity. Like sit down and have this conversation, right? Like here's the tool. For you to have that conversation together. But I think also this should be shared with people to just have this tool individually, right? Like something that everybody should kind of be looking at from, I could see people looking at this in high school. I could see them looking at it in college, right? And I would love to share this with my nephew who's like just started his first job and is going to be going to college next year because I think that he needs to see how it's kind of broken down and how he can really set himself up for success by trying to excel and get into that exemplary category across the board.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. We're hoping it can be used. We definitely want to get some insight and fine tune it, but we want to definitely put this tool out there for people to use. Um, Before we go into the more deeper stuff, and really, y'all, we gonna move this conversation to Patreon. So before we go, though, I want to make sure that we have some true value here. So we talked about some of the things that you would identify early on with a guy. Can you give me 3 things, right? I think some of these deeper conversations may be 3 to 6 months down the road, depends on how fast y'all go and what the intentionality is. But until you get to these deeper level conversations of what people's back end finances look like, give me 3 things that you're looking for beyond the first date. Like once things kind of get in flow,
Mm-hmm.
practical things that you're looking for to show that this person is stable.
Beyond the first date, practical things I'm looking for to show that this person is stable. So I think stability is a term that has to be, you have to look for it across the board, right? You don't just need to look for cues of financial stability. You need to look for cues of stability, mental stability, emotional stability, right? Like, do you feel physically secure with someone? Like, all of those things have to be kind of weighed. And the financial security, I think, just is through discernment, right? Like, if this person is complaining about debt, right? If this person is stressed out, if this person is pretty much, saying that certain things are out of their reach, right? Or sometimes people are very transparent, like, hey, I'm saving up to buy a house, right? And so certain things I'm not really going to be doing in like this next year, right? Like, okay, that's pretty like mature, right? And that makes a lot of sense. And some people don't, right? Like some people don't really have that kind of self-control. And so I think instead of just being like, how financially secure are you? Like, do you have 6 months of savings in the bank? I think asking them questions that kind of speak to their mentality around finances and around life in general is going to give you a better understanding because people can have income stability. There are people who are making $300,000 that are like up to their nose in debt, right? And there are people who are making 80,000 and they have savings, they have diversified their portfolios, right? Like they are more wealthy, right? Like their net worth is much higher than someone who's making 300,000. So that's why I'm saying like that first income piece is just the kind of scratching the surface, but you can't really know the rest of it until you actually have pointed conversations, or you're actually asking questions around how they make their money, what other things are they kind of invested in. Men love to teach. So like have a student mindset, hey, I was thinking about investing in the stock market and, putting some money into, ABC, Google, something, something. What do you think? What do you think of like these three stocks?
You see that, fellas? You see that? Men love to teach. So ask them something knowing you know the answer already. You just
Right. And like give them the space to then edify you on that topic and demonstrate whether or not they have a clue. Right. Because if then they're like, well, I don't really know nothing about, okay, well, he ain't invested in no stocks because he don't know nothing about stocks. He don't know how to open a Vanguard account. He don't know, you know what? I started this job and like they switched us over from this 401 to another one. And I was thinking about splitting it between, a Roth IRA and then also, matching what my company's put in. How are you putting in, how are you doing yours? Maybe I can follow a similar investment strategy as you have.
Let's go on over to Patreon. Listen, I want to get into the juice, and we don't have a lot of time, but listen, we going to Patreon. Thank you, Naza, for speaking to this. Y'all stay tuned. We got some more stuff coming in this episode. We're going to go back to the fellas, but catch us on Patreon for some heat because I got some heat to ask her.
I'm ready.
Yo, so like with all of the stuff that like we kind of saying, like I'm getting, right? Because usually you're saying a lot of, pressure, expectations from what other people think, right? So I'm curious, right, in terms of do you feel pressure, right, to have certain things in place just in general as a single man?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm gonna put the pressure on myself anyway. I've always been a person who's like cared about his money. I'm the kid who like at 22, before I got married, right after college, I had 20 in the bank with a 730 credit score. You know what I'm saying? That was my focus at the time. Now marriage did a number on me. You know what I'm saying? But I'm that type of person anyway. But in the dating game, it's like it's double that because especially at this age, this big age that we at now, people who have not been married or, you know what I'm saying, who have not had children have had the opportunity to really just focus on them, just focus on their finances, you know what I'm saying, no direct responsibility to their money. They've been able to buy houses and do all this other stuff. And so you're looking at women this age and they like, yo, what do you have? And yeah, it creates this this pressure because it's like we want the brother to be where we are financially. And I understand that. Like I'm not mad at that concept. But I'm also like, I wouldn't necessarily even be doing this. Like I'm not doing anything that I'm doing for you. But the question is, what is your metric for financial stability? Because someone may look at where I'm at right now and be like, bruh, you know what I'm saying? You this age, you ain't got what we think you should have at this point. But, and not egotistically, but I didn't take the route I took to be average. So in my mind, I'm about to surpass, you know what I'm saying? 2 or 3 years. What you talking about?
Yeah,
But even then, I'm like, yo, here's the pressure for me, Ali. If a woman says, I need you to have this, that, and the third for you to be eligible for love, I just want her to know that my practices, my money practices are really about living within my means, growing my means, but living within my means. And there's never going to be a time period where I'm going to have so much money that I'm just going to throw it at you. That's never going to happen. So I hope the financial stability isn't based off you being able to like, or a woman being able to like take trips or have all of this stuff or just live this complete life of like, my man just gives me money. It's like, nah, I'm a practical person. I'm a practical person. I'm never going to be frivolous with my money.
I think that's interesting, man, because I'm not sure if it's a pressure. Does it? Let me ask y'all this. So, as a black man, as a black man in this country, so we're using the word pressure. Do you feel pressure to have financial stability for yourself or to support someone else? Like, is it pressure to
I,
support yourself or is it pressure to support someone else?
I would say both, but
Okay.
I would say that it's intensified by responsibility of taking care of others, right? Being married and having kids, it's intensified. However, if it was just me, I still would have a sense of pressure. And the reason is because when we take into account, like tying it back into the whole definition of financial stability, and it talked about the sense of dot dot dot, right? When you take into account the racial economic gap that exists in America, the fact that we know that the top 100 uh income generating Caucasian people far outweigh all of us combined. You know what I mean? Like when you think about it from that standpoint, there is a whole lot of pressure when you don't have diversified income and you are relying on being a number on somebody's overhead that could unfortunately go away at some point. There
Yeah.
is a sense of pressure, right? So on and so forth. So that's to answer your question. But I got a question for you guys. And so we all have looked at the rubric. I'm sure that we all have given ourselves a self assessment. And so, whatever it is that your average was out of that, right? Adding up all of those and then dividing it by four, tying it into the conversation about pressure, would you agree that when you talk about the sense of, which is connected to the feeling that you have, right? Would you not agree that despite whatever it is that your average was when you graded yourself on the rubric, that you may feel a point lower than that? I could say I do.
Oh, I think the mindset that was created or the seed that has been planted in African American males in our community in terms of not feeling financially adequate or not feeling capable or not feeling close to is a real serious feeling, right? I don't think we really talked about changing our mindset, right? And first of all, like we really have to change our relationship with money as Black men first of the household, right? The idea of being scared of losing money, the idea of scarcity, right? In our minds, the idea that we can't cultivate just with our own hands and our own power, right, is really a real feeling.
Yeah.
But I know, right, that we need to, and when we do, get out of that mindset, right, and change our mindset that is say, right, that we do deserve to be rich, right, right, and there's nothing wrong with desiring money. I know I grew up with this mindset that there was something wrong with desiring money. There was something evil about money, right, and the reality is there isn't nothing evil about money. It isn't, right? Let's get that out of our head now. Money is good. Money is really good. So once we really inundate ourselves with like, oh nah, like, we're gonna keep money's gonna keep coming in my hands. And it does. It always finds its way in our hands, right? And once we
Yeah.
realize that, once we know what to do with it, it's gonna change the game, or it changes the game for a lot of people.
Yeah, Solomon, one of the most wisest, faithful men in the Bible, is also one of the richest men in history that we know of, right? One of the most richest men in history. So, I mean, yeah, Sean, when I looked at the number, I teeter between like a 2.5 and a 2.25. And it's because as an entrepreneur, like I do have a main job. Like my main job is I am the CEO of With Great Care, which is a coaching and consulting firm. And is it stable income? Right now it is, right? Because we got enough contracts where I know that I can pay myself off for a certain time. The issue with that, I'm a teeter on that for myself, is because I'm just that person that, like, unless I got enough contracts, unless the contracts are big enough, whereas the CEO, I know I can make payroll for like 24 months straight, then I'm not like feeling like stuff is safe, right? But what I have to think is there are people who work for me and people who work with me, right? Employees and contractors, that when the month comes, regardless of what invoices have been paid from my contracts, I still got to pay them. So their income is safer than mine because I got to pay them before I pay me.
Yeah, I mean, and I respect that. I respect that. I mean, all of what is being said ties into the reason why I asked that question. Um, and hear some connectivity and alignment in what is being said, despite our different views and perspectives. And so, like, going back, like, to tie it all in, right? The reason why I asked that question is because there are a lot of pressures. I do agree with Ali that money is not a bad thing. Um, I do think that society has uh, raised us, quote unquote, in a certain way where we've developed ideals and feelings around finances, money, stability, so on and so forth. And we are in a dire need as a community, specifically when you're talking about dating, to reprogram ourselves, right? Because even though you may register as a certain number on that rubric, the sense of stability, you might subtract 1 point, right? And that's where you feel and where your eye, where your perspective is. If you can agree to that, it's not hard to say that your counterpart, potentially the woman that is trying to date you, could also look at you in that way, right? And you can't really blame her, but it's because of how society has raised us, quote unquote. Now, so the important thing is to understand that we now have to reprogram our thinking and the way that we move by understanding the power of the dollar and how two is better than one. And so we have to not necessarily look at the finances that somebody is bringing in. We need to look at their spending habits. We need to look at their strengths on whether you are a saver or whether you are a planner. How can you guys come in together and complement each other? So now, regardless of where you are registering in that rubric now as a team, you understand how to add a point to that rubric, right? That's
Yeah.
that's what I think is most important.
I love the fact that
You should, before you respond, because it's a reason why, and I want to hear you respond to this. And I hear you, Sean, but and here's what I'm going to, play the other side, because we got listeners of both male and females, right? I don't think the concept of what these women are saying has necessarily changed. I think they are speaking up for themselves, right? Because if you think about tradition, right, not the idea of a man being able to support and provide and have a place of security for a woman hasn't changed, right? In my culture in Nigeria, right, you have to show that you can financially support, right, the person that you're giving, the daughter that you're giving up.
So a dowry.
I mean, so if her father isn't there as a representative and she speaks up for herself and she then says, hey, what do you have to show me that you can support me before I give you anything right close to what you are seeking? So I don't really have an issue with the idea, right, that the first thing that they are asking or trying to figure out is, can you support me?
I respect that, bro. And I think that you represent a sect of our culture, of our African American culture, where you could stand strong on that. And so I respect that. However, the problem though is that that is just one sect within the bigger culture, right? And I'm gonna explain why. The definition of tradition: the transmission of customs or beliefs from generation to generation, or the fact of being passed on in this way. A doctrine believed to have divine authority, though not in the scriptures, right? So if we just take the transmission from generation to generation, customs and beliefs, so on and so forth, you said yourself, you are Nigerian. In your culture, in the Nigerian culture, X, Y, and Z. Cool. I'm a African American and I don't know what I am. I'm teaching myself, I'm teaching others as I'm learning. There's not a tradition that's being passed on. There's not customs and beliefs that are being passed on. And we have to think about that from a bigger perspective as African Americans, because not everybody knows who they are.
Hey, I want to touch on both of those. I'm jumping in.
Go ahead.
One,
Paul,
we live.
Please don't touch on mine. Paul.
I didn't say what I was telling. I'm touching on both of those opinions, both of those thoughts, traditions, and beliefs. Damn, Sean, let me live. One, we live in a world, you know what I'm saying? We live in an economy where there's a conversation that to become truly financially stable marriage is actually one of the ways you become financially stable. Like if you read the book A Millionaire Mindset or The Millionaire Next Door, right? They literally surveyed all of these first generation millionaires. And all of these first generation millionaires, most of them, one, didn't get their first million until they were in their 40s. But then two, they list the top 3 or top 5 things that helped them get there. And in the top 3 for across the board was a supportive spouse, right? Whether that be financial support or home support, they contribute marriage and relationship to their financial stability. And so a lot of times you got people saying, well, you got to be financially stable before to be eligible for love. Like you got to be at a 3 or a 4. But what they're not remembering is that we live in an economy where getting married be helping people get to 3 and 4 because 2 incomes are better than 1. Or at least if it ain't 2 incomes, I ain't got to pay daycare because my wife is at home taking care of the kid.
Yeah, but
right now, the other side of that, because I'm Muslim, we know about dowries, right? That's one of the things you still have to do. But let's talk about what that dowry is. When we talk about agreeing with women on what financial stability looks like, that dowry isn't throwing away money on trips. That dowry isn't throwing away money on $300 or $400 or $500 dates every week. That money is money that you give the woman that should cover. It's almost like an emergency fund. The dowry is meant to give the woman to cover 3 to 6 months of her expenses as a way of saying, if this marriage don't, you know what I'm saying? Not if this marriage don't work out, but it's a security for her. If the marriage don't work, the dowry is then there for the woman to be able to live 6 or 7 months without you because she's supposed to go back into the care of her father. Now, a woman can also give up that dowry. She can also say, I see the dowry. Thank you for submitting this. Let's use it to grow our family. So she could say, let's take this dowry and now use it to grow the money in the family. That's different. You know what I'm saying? So the question is not about whether a man can take care or not. I think we agree on that. You should be able to take care. The question is, what is a woman looking for to prove that man can take care? Is she looking for a dowry or is she looking for $500 dates every week?
I couldn't disagree more with both of y'all. Be honest with you.
What is it to disagree with?
And I just, you kind of helped me with what Sean said. Yeah, thank you for the tradition piece, but that doesn't negate the idea that security and cultivation from a man has always been in place. Now, I agree with you. There's been systems in place that try to cover you from reading the word, from knowing the word, right? But that doesn't excuse you from knowing who you are in a relationship and what you're supposed to bring and what you're supposed to provide. You should say, use the word contribute, not, and then you said it help to, right? So there's conflicting energy and mindsets in that, right? So am I coming to the situation already and then she's contributing, right? Or I don't have anything and she's helping. And here's the third part.
Right.
Do I have a plan that I can articulate that provides the security?
Yeah, I'm not talking about a man not having anything.
Right, but just
what I did was I referenced the rubric and said that a man may be at a 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, right? It may be the marriage or relationship that allows them collectively to get to a 4. And I've seen that multiple times. Not that a man came in without play. Like I got a homie. He came in with making $160K a year his first year out of law school as a lawyer. got with his wife, who was making 80 to 90K in the school system as a teacher, and they put a process together where they lived off of her money at 80 or 90K a year, and then took his 160, paid off all of their debt, paid off all of their cars, then went after paying off their house, and now he's a partner in the firm. They debt free. She ain't really got to work if she don't want to, but she does. But they put in a plan together to get to that place. You see what I'm saying? Like, and so I'm not saying that a man has to have nothing. What I'm saying is, what is and I'll go back to the question. What is a woman looking for to prove that he has something? Is
My
she looking
last,
for
my,
a
my last,
dowry, or is she looking for
you
him
said it. You
spending
said
money?
it. You said it. You should. And I said it in my last point. She's looking for a plan. If she looking for a plan,
I hope that's what she's looking for.
Yeah.
nah, bro. She's looking for a
I
plan.
well, I can't. I'm not going to give my opinion on what a woman is looking for, because I haven't been single for quite some time. So I'm not going to define that, right? What I will say is that I don't disagree with anything that you said, Ali. But however, I think that it is important to delineate tradition versus what it is that Ali spoke to when as it pertains to um, what is intrinsic or should be intrinsic within a man. Like, that's two different things.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all got it in us to take care of. And I don't have to ask the question again, but I will. My question is, and I think we got some of that from our guests today, but I would really love to hear from the women, right? What are you looking for to qualify if a man has financial stability? And what is the agreed upon thing? And I think subjectively, we know it could be different for every woman. You know what I'm saying? So how, you know what I'm saying? What is a man supposed to, and that's why I think it goes back to what Ali asked. Like, are you getting that pressure from yourself or from women? Because at the end of the day, I think you should just put the pressure on yourself as a man to have something for yourself.
I would also ask women, though, where do you register yourself if you were to grade yourself? And based on where you grade yourself and what it is that registers for you, for your counterpart, or for that man, how do those two add up together? Like, are you being more, do you have more expectation of that man than you do for yourself? Like, I would be very curious to hear those answers.
Me too. So this is what we do. We know we're giving access to this rubric or this framework to our Patreon people. Everybody who subscribed to us on Patreon will get access to this rubric. And so we, for those of us, who could tap in and see it, check out the rubric, grade yourself, see where you are, and see if you align with it. But we also want to know, like, where do you align on that rubric? Like, where will you grade yourself, and what is that for y'all? But of course, we got to transition, man. We got to get through the day. I think this is very fruit. I like the conversation. I like the disagreeing, you know what I'm saying? And I like what we agreed at. Because at the end of the day, I know one thing about this squad right here. We going to figure out how to make some coin. Okay?
1000%.